Okay, so today I'm going to review the Beyerdynamic DT 240 Pro. They cost about $80 and let's just see how good they are. As always, I want to start off with what's in the box. There is this cable here with the 1/4-inch adapter, even though I'm actually not 100% sure if this is the right one because it looks a little bit wrong, but yeah. Then there was also quite thin, basic carrying pouch that most wouldn't use anyways, and I actually already lost it somewhere, and the headphones themselves. Before we are getting into these, let's take a look at the cable. It is 1.2 meters long, and as you can see, it's coiled. It could be stretched up to 3 meters, but I don't think you really want to because there is already quite some drag onto that. And I'm not a fan of coiled wires because they are kind of, a little bit unwieldy. But if you are on the go all the time and you want something that's very portable because it doesn't take up so much space in your luggage and it doesn't really tangle up, then it might be something good. The quality itself is fine because, as I said, it doesn't really tangle up. It doesn't really get knotted or something like that. So this is actually kind of good enough. Now the cable works like this. You have the choice to use it on either side, just plug it in. There is no twist and lock, which is either good or bad, but it should be quite easy to maybe find a replacement because this is just a typical 3.5 millimeter jack. So actually quite good. Now let's get into the headphone itself and start off with the build quality. It's mostly just plastic and this fake leather, but I have to say for $80 executed very well because with 196 grams it's quite lightweight, but still feels very solid because the leather doesn't feel cheap. Also quite some good cushioning here. The plastic also feels fine, executed well, no sharp edges, no kind of bad spots or so. We have nice steps and they definitely stay like this. You won't definitely change it by accident. They are rotatable in one direction as you can see here, so you can fold them flat. A little bit twist and lock. This is still in both directions here. Actually, as you can see, it's quite a small circle, so they don't really stay too much off your head. Maybe this looks a little bit on the bulky side. They could have made this a little bit more elegant, but the plastic itself feels fine, so I don't think this will break anytime soon. Feels very sturdy. Now about the design. Like I said, the cushioning here is good, but one thing you can maybe already see, because that's a gripe that I have with Beyerdynamic, they use round ear cups and the ear isn't round, but why is this so small? Because if we compare this with the Beyerdynamic Amaron, for example, round, so you need a lot more space to fit a whole ear in it, which those just don't do, because the problem is, in terms of width, absolutely no problem, and the cups are actually nice and soft, even though they are also a little bit bouncy, which is a little bit of an disadvantage that I will get into a little bit later. They are deep enough, but it really doesn't matter because this is at best a semi-over-ear. Because if you, for example, compare this with the Yamaha MT5, you can see pretty much the same width, but these are so much taller, and here I can easily fit my ear in it without any issues at all. So what happened in my case is that the bottom of my ear is inside, but the upper side was always touching. And due to this bounce, after a while it starts to get a little bit odd because at first they're actually super comfortable. After like half an hour I noticed this kind of pushback on my ear and it gets a little bit, I'm not gonna say that it hurts or something like that, but a little bit annoying. And like after an hour it actually will make the ears a little bit sore, but as you can see, it's quite subtle. The cushioning here is totally enough because most of the weight is distributed towards the sides. There is, I would say, a quite good stiff clamping force, but it's not too much because being still soft without the pushback, it would maybe be a little bit better, but then they won't be maybe kind of deep enough. But I'm good for half an hour, maybe an hour, but then I'm not so happy with the comfort. The fit is amazing because they don't move at all, not a millimeter or anything like that. So I would say for everyone who's used to over-ear headphones or semi-over-ear headphones should be absolutely fine. If you don't like over-ears, if you don't like something on your ear, then these are maybe just a little bit too small, but otherwise they would have been actually really nice. Also, obviously your ears, due to the fake leather, will get a little bit warm. It wasn't that much of an issue even in hotter environments, but they will sweat, but it wasn't kind of uncomfortable. What is though actually surprisingly good, because of the overall quite thick pad and still covering everything else, the isolation is on a good level. Overall leakage is also, I would say, quite fine. Now, how hard are they to power? And I would say actually moderate, because I think most people would be able to use this with a headphone. I mean, with a smartphone. I personally not, because I listen way too loud and I generally always said it that I think no headphone jack on a phone is good enough, and at least it's maybe an LG phone. But most people should be fine. If you use an amp, no problem at all. And it scales quite well, I would say. So let's get into the sound. Let's start off with the sound stage and the imaging. Sound stage, I would say, is a little bit, I don't want to quite say claustrophobic, but it's quite small, even for a closed back. But due to actually also the highs being a little bit on the, let's say, softer, more recessed side, they feel even more so a little bit small and tight. Therefore, the imaging is good, but after all, if you don't have a big soundstage, it's not all that hard to get a good imaging. But other than that, if you maybe like a smaller soundstage, and that just comes with the territory of a closed back. Now about the signature. Overall, I would say the bass extends really far well down, but at least in the mid bass, kick bass, there is a little bit of an elevation that kind of holds up a little bit into the mids. But the mids itself then, up to even the vocal range, are noticeably recessed, which makes them step a little bit further back with the vocals. The highs then have a little bit of a pushback up again, but they also roll off quite early. So I would say bass itself is really nice, especially due to the slightly more pronounced bass. You get a nice kick bass of it, then they definitely have more bass, like for example an LCD2C, Sennheiser 580, 58X and so on. Obviously those are open ones, but this is for a closed one. Has a nice punchy bass. It's maybe not the highest resolution. There is not too much structure in it, but you get most of it out. And I would say if you maybe mix, because after all this is a pro headphone which is kind of made for mixing. If you if you mix mostly like bass heavy music, then this one sounds really good. If you though mix a lot of kind of like metal or vocal heavy music, then I think they are maybe not quite the right thing, at least from what I see, because mids are noticeably on the recessed side, and I think a little bit of details and actually kind of some information seems to get lost compared to some more detailed, some more open, some airy headphones. But I have to say, it's actually kind of fun sound at stage because you can listen to it and it's definitely not fatiguing, because the highs, like I said, they roll off quite early. I would wish for them to be a little bit more towards the higher end, a little bit more pushed upwards. You can obviously cue that if you want to, but it feels like you would lose out some of the details on the higher end of the spectrum, also a little bit in the vocal range. But I would say for mostly electronic music without vocals and so on, these do a good job, because after all, like I said, the details are there. Now I would wish for generally a little bit more resolution, a little bit more structure and a little bit more details. But if you just want to listen to them, actually just for an enjoyable experience, they're actually nice because they don't really fatigue you. They don't really expect too much of you, and you can just lay back and enjoy the music and kind of drawn into it, because you don't get too much you can listen to, which is maybe good or bad. But I think for a monitoring, for a headphone that is for pro work done, even for $80, it's maybe not quite enough. Because yeah, it's nice to listen to music to, but whenever I switch from something like this to most other headphones, it feels like I hear so much more. Now, where this one definitely shines is in the lower end, because bass is very nice. Here you get most of the details, a good solid resolution, even though it could have even more so. But this is where it's strong. So I would say for everything electronic, these are very well done. For everything a little bit more advanced, a little bit more sophisticated, it almost seems to me like they're just not focused towards it. Obviously, if you cue it, you can maybe get something back of that, which obviously sounds a little bit harsh in general, but I still have to say, for $80, you can't expect too much more, which already brings me kind of to the competitors. There is something like an Audio-Technica M40X, which costs about the same and should be also really good. I've never got to try that one. But if it's to below $100, my first choice is still the Yamaha MT5, because just in direct comparison, the bass is even more so a little bit more punchy and pronounced. And yeah, I know back then I said it's very neutral, but back then I didn't really know much when I reviewed them. But I still love them just as much as I did back then, because the highs are way more upfront. The mids are also way more pushed forward. The vocals are very nice and intimate. It feels just like you have a bigger soundstage, not a much bigger one, but a way more kind of refined one, with just overall a better experience. But highs for some people could be harsh, vocals could be too much forward. And this is just what brings me back to these. For people who want a kinda neutral enough, even though more on the bass heavy side, without too much highs, because you don't really need them too much. If you wanna just kinda get the basic feel for everything, and vocal range that is kind of on line with the instruments, where nothing really stands out too much, where everything kinda is on a certain level, these might actually work out very well. Personally, it just doesn't quite fit my own sound preference, because I just like way more of a brighter sound. So these sound a little bit dark, not quite thick or heavy, because the bass definitely isn't boomy or something like that. It's a very precise and nice tight bass. So not quite sure what actually else to say. For 80 bucks, I think you can't really go wrong, unless you maybe don't like the comfort at all. And if you, like I said, are someone who wants something more brighter with more details at the higher end. But for general use, for 80 bucks, from what I compared with other headphones, it seems like a solid buy. And that's where I'm gonna end it. Okay, until next time, bye.